Minimum Wage Policy in the United States by Christian Anderson. Why is minimum wage important? Minimum wage is important because the higher the minimum wage, the more it boosts the overall economy. Because if you increase the amount of money that people make, they're able to spend more and therefore put more money into the pockets of those who own businesses and in turn keep those who work for minimum wage employed. It also makes certain that those who make minimum wage do not have to work multiple jobs to make ends meet, and they can afford stuff like general living expenses, daycare, and can be prepared for emergency situations like a busted water heater or a broken down car. Who are the major players and who is affected? Those who are affected by this policy include the Federal Reserve. They postulate the American dollar and take those findings to determine the minimum wage so that they can keep our boat afloat. Those who are affected from this policy include everybody in our country, across the board. Like a pebble dropped into a calm pond, minimum wage affects everybody. This policy arrived on the public agenda because researchers found that inflation was increasing at a faster rate than those with minimum wage jobs stay in the black. They found that people were unable to make ends meet because of low minimum wages. The researchers also found that crime increases when the people are strapped for money and they need to provide food or medicine for their family. Who pushed for this outside the government? Municipalities, trade unions, and advocates pushed for higher minimum wage. Municipalities pushed for higher minimum wage because, as the saying goes, the rising tide lifts all boats. That means if those living in a community make a living wage, then can afford to live beyond the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of need, then they are improved for everyone. Trade units and advocates have a higher stake in the minimum wage as they represent the needs of the people in their unions who need to make a living wage. What policy addressed this and who formed it? How was it implemented? Well, the policy was formulated to address the issue of raising minimum wage was called the Minimum Wage Act, the Fair Minimum Wage Act of 2007. The major players of the formulation of this policy during 2007 were George Miller, who was a Democratic senator in California, all 232 Democratic senators. All 233 Democratic senators gave a yes vote, along with 82 Republicans. 116 Republicans voted no, and 4 Republicans abstained from the vote. The Federal Reserve was then responsible to implement it and oversee it. Once passed in 2007, the Fed slowly increased the minimum wage from $5.15 an hour to $7.25 an hour. There were 3 increments: $5.85 per hour 60 days after the policy was put into play, $6.55 an hour 12 months after the implementation, then $7.25 an hour 1 year after it became $6.55 per hour. States can also have minimum wages greater than the federal minimum. Who was affected? How effective was this policy? This policy was very effective at the time as it increased the minimum wage so that people who were working minimum wage bracket could make ends meet. It also stimulated the economy with a symbiotic relationship that is, people made more money, which allowed them to spend more money. It is important. Minimum wage is important to the government because the minimum wage affects the entire population. It's not just the subset that's affected. The public officials found it important to fix this problem so that they could be reelected by their constituents who want the minimum wage to be higher for most constituents. The government had a vested interest as well, because increasing minimum wage could increase the amount of money the government would get from income taxes. Therefore, the federal budget would increase. The legislation passed in 2007 was very effective at the time. However, this issue is still on the public docket because minimum wage is still too low. On average, in the United States, in order to support yourself, each person needs to work a job for a 40-hour week that pays $15 an hour. Hopefully, our government will realize the benefits and ignore the corporate entities who try to stop them.